Welcome back to the GCK community. Today we'll be exploring some of the swaying saltgrass avenues and tranquil Trinity stretches afforded to paddlers launching from Hugo Point Park. We'll start with the launch amenities. This Corps of Engineers recreational spot boasts just about everything that one would expect. There are restrooms, a pavilion, a small playground, 2 launches capable of accommodating paddle and powered craft and bordering piers for mooring or fishing. In most cases, there is a Chambers County Sheriff on site. A series of crosses parallel to the launch stand as a stark reminder of the prerequisite diligence that this wonderful pastime demands, especially in high-traffic areas such as those along this stretch of the Trinity, where anglers, ski boats, and even fan boats are relatively common. We'll cast off from the launch and bear right at the buoy. This canal, which is labeled Cotton Bayou according to Google Maps, parallels Old River Lake and can offer some light respite from winds that sometimes hammer the lake's expanse. But just as a side note, this route at large is not optimal for windy days due to several more open stretches and a sparsity of wind-quelling vegetation. One more note about this immediate canal section. When water levels are low, you're likely to drag bottom and churn a lot of mud. In these conditions, I would opt to bypass the canal and skirt Old River Lake. But thankfully, water levels are at the highest they've been in quite a while, so there was no issue today. Halfway down the canal, you'll have a good view of Old River Lake to your port side. Until recently, this section was also marked by a beacon-laden cross, but as of today, it's no longer standing sentinel over this stretch. Keep to the canal, and you'll soon come to an intersection marked by a sandbar on the left when water levels are low to normal, and a concrete blockhouse across the channel which was part of an extensive, decades-old network of levees that once served to regulate levels in the area. Bearing left will take you onto Old River Lake, leading to Old River proper. But we'll opt to bear right and head east. This section is not named on the maps I have at my disposal, but some locals refer to it as an extension of Cross Bayou. Keep to this course for a good while. Along the way, you're likely to see several species of waterfowl, some massive gar and a few peaking alligators. After a handful of curves, you'll come to a point opposite Horse Island to the starboard side, and another sandbar to the port side. This is a great place to stop and stretch your legs. I've even seen boaters pull a grill out and barbecue on this spot once or twice. I did opt to take a breather here today, but the higher waters left only a small section poking through the surf compared to its more substantial usual footprint. My usual route from here sees me heading south on Cross Bayou until intersecting High Tree Bayou. But today, we'll head directly across from the sandbar to a relatively small entrance to a spidering section of smaller, nameless corridors. This is a great spot to explore, as it offers so many branches. Just be mindful that, in my experience, gators are plentiful back here, and this is where I've seen the largest dominance in the entire area. Other than a few small heads popping up, I didn't see much due to the heat, but make no mistake, they're likely all around. On past outings, when the weather has been more conducive, a trek through this section will be accompanied by dozens of splashes as gator after gator goes to water at the prospect of an approaching paddler. Again, this is no reason to fear, as it's simply their avoidance instinct. Just keep your diligence all the same. Wind is also fairly suppressed in the section. However, I found it to be a bit unpleasant today, as the absence of breeze really accented the heat. Following meandering about in this section for a bit, we'll come to the more substantial waters of High Tree Bayou. Either way will get you back home, but we'll opt to head right here. At some points where the vegetation breaks on the port side, you'll see the stacked stones of the barrier that separates Dutton Lake to the east. Eventually, we'll come to a point where we'll bear right with the expanse of Cotton Lake to our left. Following this somewhat brief corridor will lead back to the area of Cross Bayou where we previously stopped at the sandbar. We'll make a quick detour through a small section that cuts behind the sandbar, which will find us heading back on the tract we've already traversed. From here, it's just a matter of retracing the earlier route. That is, unless we opt for a detour, which is exactly what we're going to do. Just before reaching the blockhouse that marked our route early on, We'll bear right down a channel known as Alligator Cove. On my first trip here, several years ago, it lived up to its name with dozens of small to medium gators traversing back and forth. But since then, I've only seen a handful surfacing here. We'll follow this canal south. A quick dogleg will find us paralleling the remnants of the old levee on the left. Alligator Cove will eventually dead end. From there, we'll head back, bearing right at a break in the canal, which will take us on to Old River Lake itself for a brief duration. And with that, we'll cut north and then west back to the Hugo Point launch, concluding an approximately 7.25-mile paddle. My closing observations about this particular route are as follows. The launch amenities are solid. I would advise that paddlers avoid weekends and holidays here, as it's common for the lot to be full of trailers and for the surrounding waters to be teeming with powered craft that are not always as mindful of paddlecraft as they ought to be. It is primarily for this reason that I don't recommend this to novice solo paddlers. The other reason is due to how arduous this trek can be when winds are high. I've had quite a few paddles here that began with ideal conditions, but concluded with winds high above the forecast predictions. For intermediate to experienced paddlers, this route should prove no issue. Just have an idea of the conditions and how they may change throughout the day in question. Scenery is subjective. That said, while I do enjoy this paddle, it is definitely more sparse in terms of vegetation with its endless marsh aesthetics of saltgrass and cattails. My preference is for the more forest-laden sections of nearby Turtle Bayou, which will likewise offer more shelter. Still, it's well worth paddling to get the lay of the land. It is light to moderate in terms of wildlife viewing. There were a few of the expected coastal birds throughout, along with a spectacular aerobatic presentation that I experienced on Cross Bayou. But aside from that, you're far more likely to see more wildlife on neighboring routes in my experience. If birding is your thing, heading east from Old River Lake onto Old River proper will likely yield quite a bit more waterfowl. In the right season, pelicans there are abundant and make for some unparalleled photography opportunities. I do like the route. The only thing I'll say from my perspective is that, other than some variations in width, there is not much that differentiates any portion of this trek from another besides the blockhouse and occasional sandbar. But this is just one paddler's subjective perspective. Give it a shot and let me know what you think. We'll have plenty more route reviews from this immediate demographic to come, so stay tuned, and my sincere thanks for being a part of the GCK community. Paddle safe. God bless.